All right, everyone, let's get just right to it. Looks like that's up and going. For anyone this is kind of your first time checking the video out, just real quick, my name is Mr. Barden. I'm a teacher, Louisiana. I do a bunch of coding and audio production classes. Uh, and this video here is just part of my course for programming digital media. And basically, just going to go over today why you would want to create a custom function in JavaScript and just how you would go about doing that, the different kinds of things you should be aware of and be able to take advantage of. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos in this series, definitely check them out. I've got a playlist. I'll put that down in the description after I'm done recording this. I kind of do these live, just in the moment, so you can see me typing it in real time. You can run into any bugs that I run into, and we go from there. Oops, I forgot to turn on my mouse highlighter. There we go. All right, so with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So, like I mentioned, this video is all about making functions. So, if you're just coding in normal plain JavaScript without any libraries, then technically, yes, you have made custom functions before. This video is geared more towards people who have been using various libraries for different things that have functions already generated in them. Just a quick example, if I were to go, I'm using the P5 online editor and library, but if I was just to copy this and actually go to the text file that is the P5 library, you'll see that for the most part, it's just a bunch of functions that get defined in the memory of this computer. Um, I'm not going to scroll through the whole thing 'cause it's a very large text file, but you can kind of see how uh, a lot of it is basically just various functions and objects and things of that nature that kind of serve as a template for us uh, to use for however we want. I'm gonna go back to what we're doing right here. So everything that we've called for the most part here is a function. You can usually tell when a function is being called in JavaScript is it has the little parentheses right after the name of the function. So like no stroke here on line 11 of this example that I'll talk about is a very clear example, but all of these are functions. A lot of times you will have functions with arguments listed out here in the parentheses when you call the function, and I'll talk a little bit about why you would want that and how you would go about doing that as we work our way through the video. So again, I just have a few examples right here in the draw function that are used for, well, drawing something. These are all different functions right here. And actually, I realized I forgot to pull one out. So I'm just going to add another function and say angle mode. Uh, so by default, all arcs and angles are handled in radians in P5, but when I teach this course, I do it with degrees. I think that it's just a little bit easier for the majority of students to handle working in degrees rather than radians. At the very least, it's easier for me. Uh, so that's what this function does, and we just give it the argument degrees. Um, so I'll save that right there. So let's look at what we've got right here. So I've got this code right here, and it draws this little Pac-Man ghost looking guy. It's, that's all it does. It draws the ghost right in the middle of the canvas. Uh, that's it. There's nothing fancy about it, but you can see how it's all the various shapes, and they all happen to overlap, and then we can just kind of translate it around to wherever we need it. As we've done before throughout this class, there's nothing wrong with this, but let's just kind of look at what it would take to get two ghosts on the screen. Um, so you'd have to essentially copy and paste everything, um, or manually type it out in the worst case scenario for maybe whatever reason you couldn't copy and paste, or you forgot that that was the thing you can do. But you'd have to copy and paste this repeated code out a whole bunch. And it's very time consuming. We might be able to get away with, again, copying and pasting and maybe make this, right there, and we can kind of move it around bit by bit. Um, but basically, for every individual ghost or whatever you're wanting to have on the screen that you want, you're going to have to copy and paste this code and then manually change all of the different things. So maybe instead of that there, and then I wanted to change the color and all that, I have to go in and manually change all of these elements. But generally speaking, it's very repetitive code. It's the same thing. I'm not going to be changing the shapes and all of that because I want the code to look the same. I'm going to get rid of that ghost. Um, this is where a function can come into play. Generally speaking, when you'll want to use a function in your code whenever you have something that's going to be repeatably executed. It could be drawing something to the canvas like I have right here. It could be a little bit of math. It could be, applying stuff, making things. It could be whatever you need. But if it's something that you're going to be doing repeatedly, you're going to want to make a function that can serve as a template, and then you just call the function whenever you need to. I'll show some examples of that, but let's just get into how do you make a function. Well, funnily enough, most of the template here that you start with in P5 shows us what we need. So the way I do this is I like to go to the very bottom of my sketch, and I'm just going to add some extra lines just so it's not at the bottom of the screen for you all. But I like to go to the very bottom of my sketch just to make sure I'm not inside of any other functions. You can define a function inside of another function, but just like local variables, you won't be able to refer to them outside of that function. You run into some issues like that. So again, I like to go all the way to the bottom of my sketch because the order doesn't really matter. And if I need to change that order after the fact, I can just move the whole thing around. So I go to the very bottom, and you type out the word function. You'll see that with my color scheme, you'll see that the word lights up and turns yellow. You then have to give it a name. Just like a variable, you're going to want to make it descriptive of what the function does. In my case, it's going to draw the ghost, so I'm calling it function ghost. We'll make another one at the end of the video that does some extra stuff as well. But you also have to give it the parentheses right here to indicate that it is a function, and the brackets right here to tell us what goes into it, define the scope of the function. So whatever we put inside of these brackets is going to be the code that gets executed. So to make life easy, I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside of function ghost. So we have that just right there. It's the exact same code. It's just inside of function ghost. You'll notice nothing's popping up anymore, even though all of this code is right here. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger just so we have a little more room to work with. But yeah, nothing is popping up, but the code is still here. That's because functions are what we call modular. So with modular coding, the idea is that you have all of these different pieces, all of these different functions that can get executed at different times. So as your code is running, as it's needed, it's able to kind of adapt and say, oh, I need this function, and pulls it out and uses it for as long as it needs, and then it stops, and then it grabs another function until it needs it and stops. So it's able to pick and choose the different pieces, again, what's called modular, so you're able to change what's making it up with different components and work that way. This is very useful for more complicated code that could tax the computer's memory and resources. A lot of what I do in this class isn't that complex, but that's the idea, is that we have all of this code we can access, but we're only using what we need when we need it. This will make things run faster and make things run smoother, and it'll just make your life a lot easier because we're not having to run the checks every frame. We're not having to draw all the stuff every frame. It's only when we need it. So let's make us need it. So I've got this, the draw function here that, draws the code. And if I want to see the ghost here inside of function ghost, we just type out the name of our function. And then you need to have the parentheses right here. When you have the parentheses, that tells your computer that we are going to execute the function. If you don't, you're just listing off the name of the function. So there are some cases where you'd want that, but if you want to have your code executed, you need these parentheses to tell the computer to do it. And you'll see that this has appeared. So you can get creative with how you do this. I'm just going to be a little boring, but you can do it. If I can't type, if mouse is pressed, we can call function ghost. There. So now, let's tidy that up. If I click on the canvas, the ghost appears. Boo, doo, 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 doo. Woohoo! And that's that. So again, you can put whenever you call the function behind whatever gates. So maybe, as the, things adapt and change and your variables update, you go and you call certain functions in order to respond to that. Just one more quick example. If I wanted to be like, let bg shade equal 255 bg shade that helps if we have bg shade. I'm typing this out kind of. We're gonna delete that, and then if bg shade is less than 0, we're going to draw the ghost. So now, as the screen darkens here, once it gets to 0, we draw the ghost, and that pops in, and there we go. So again, you can set this to automatically update. It can be a manual trigger. It just depends on the context of what you're working on. But the main thing I want to point is that you have to call the function in order for it to use, because it's that modular idea. But there's one little problem. You may have noticed this, or you picked it up, but you'll notice that in the function here, these are all hard-coded values. Every time we call ghost, it is going to draw the exact same thing in the same spot. It's going to execute the whatever code in exactly the same way. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, if that's what you want. But if you want to have a function that is customizable, let's say maybe we want multiple ghosts on our code, we have to find a way to customize this function. And this is where the idea of using it more as a template comes into play. So that's why I'm going to kind of adapt this code and this stuff right here, just a bit by bit. And we'll get a much more interactive and much more spooky code for Halloween. So let's do just that. In order to, again, customize all these, we need arguments. Technically, in the brain of P5, every ellipse is the same. If you wanted to, if you had an ellipse here and then another one later on, it would be identical. What makes them unique and makes them able for you, the user, to tell them apart are the different arguments that we can give it. In this case, X position, Y position, width, and height. So by changing these numbers here that we use to draw the shape, we can have these unique shapes that we can tell apart. They aren't just going to be, identical and exactly on top of each other. So how do we do that? Well, we have to give it some arguments. The first step that I like to do is decide what do you want to control. Because again, the arguments are what is customizable about your function. In the case of drawing the ghost, I usually like to control, the X position, the Y position. Sometimes I like to do the color of the ghost, maybe. How about the size? we can do that. You can add as many as you want, really. So basically, we have these 4 arguments here, and I just named these whatever I want. These will function like variables within the context of our function right here. So again, the XY color size, we have that there. I'm going to keep the eye color blue, but this can literally be anything that you want to customize, you list as an argument right here. So now what we do is instead of going in and having all of this hard coded, we can set this up to, you know, be a template essentially. So I'm going to start with the X and Y. This is controlled as you saw by before with the translate function. So I just say instead of that we just X and Y. So that's there. Um, the next thing I have is the color. You can see that we didn't have anything by default, so it's just kind of appearing over there. But the color, so instead of filling it as this pink shade right here, we can color. And size, I actually have to add one here. So instead of translate, I'll add scale after the translate, and we'll scale it by size. Let's see. I'm just gonna add a comment. Smaller. There we are, just so we know. So basically, yeah, scale. I'm just gonna adjust my legs a bit. Basically, if something is less than 1, it is gonna be make everything smaller. If it's bigger than 1, it's gonna make it bigger. It's essentially a multiplier of the various values. So we've got that right there. And I think that's just about it. Again, you can customize any of these things. So maybe you wanted to change the mouth, um, or the eyeballs, or whatever you want. You can change any of it. I'm gonna leave it at this beautiful blue as we have here. We've got that. So now you'll notice nothing's happening. You may get some errors, but now whenever we call ghost, we have to give it a specific value. So let's say that we want 200, 300. I'll make him green, and I'll still make it the default size of 1 times its normal size. So now the ghost that pops up is right there. So woohoo! So again, we've customized this. So maybe I want to have a different one, and instead of this, we'll do it at. I'm gonna be real creative. 300, 200. I'll make him coral's a fun color, and I'll make it 0.5 times its normal size. So now we should see that once the screen darkens, we get these 2 ghosts, and they are different. It's the same template very clearly, but it is 2 distinct ghosts. They have different unique positions, unique attributes to that ghost. Again, you can customize this as much as you want. It depends on the function that you are making. So I'm just gonna again play around with this just for a little bit, to make something mildly interesting. So what I want to do, there's different ways you can go about this. Let's ghost colors equal. So basically, I'm going to make an array of different colors that we're going to use for our ghosts. You can use the preset ones right here. You can use RGB values. It's up to you. I'm going to use RGB values and just pick some random numbers. So I think that'll be. Oop, I missed one right here. All right, so how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17 options. So let's do 18, 19, 20, and one more. Okay, that should be enough for what I want to do. Um, so let's set up something a little bit more creative. Um, so instead of this, I'm going to make a for loop, and we're going to make a bunch of instances of this. Um, so I'm just going to turn off my auto refresh. So for, I put that in the wrong spot. Let I assign 0, 6, I think I want. All right, so I have my for loop that's going to run 6 times. And basically, each time we're going to call ghost with some slightly different aspects. So we'll say that we'll put this at a random width and a random position in the height. Let's see, the next thing we want to control is the color. So we'll say ghost color, and specifically we want I plus 1, I plus 2. That should work. And then the size will be random in between 0.2 and 2. This, I've broken something here. Ah, yeah, it's not gonna like that. Okay, well, all right, we'll make one quick thing. Let this color equal this ghost color I ghost color I plus 1 ghost color I plus 2, and then this whole thing is an array. Okay, that, and then we'll just change this up to be this color. So basically, what should happen is, as the screen darkens, we will start to get ghosts appearing all over the screen. To make it be less flashy, I'm gonna say frame, not frame count, frame rate. And I'm just gonna set that to 2. I'm also gonna say, to make this not take forever, it's gonna be minus equals 5. I'm gonna increase that rate just a bit, and this should get us some ghosts. We'll see if I did the math right. So I run this. So we're starting here, and again, it's going slowly, but we've got our screen gradually darkening, and once it gets to black like it has before, we're gonna draw these ghosts, and they'll just kind of randomly jump around the screen. All right, we're approaching it. And I did break something. This is what I get for trying this on the fly. Ghost color not being defined in the current scope. It's a global... Oh, ghost colors. Forgot. Yes. And actually, I'm just going to make this be... Well, no, that should be fine if I do it every iteration of the loop. Yeah, let's just run that one more time. It helps to make sure that everything is spelled properly, because otherwise you'll run into errors just like that. But now that we're running this bit by bit, we should see multiple ghosts appearing on the screen. They're going to randomly change their size and position, but their colors should stay the same. There we are. So, ooh, it's spooky. But you can see we've got this collection of 6 ghosts. They're very clearly the 6 ghosts right here, because you can see their colors are the same because I'm just picking them out of this array of values. You could do this with the preset web colors, or you can really customize everything however you want. But then, again, because these values are changing, the instances of the function are changing as well. One final thing I want to mention about arguments with your functions is that the order matters. So inside of the function, where I'm just filling these in here, so x up here just gets filled in anywhere you type x in the function, the value is here. But x is the first item listed in our template, so it's going to be the first number that we type in our code here. So it's going to always be the first argument is always going to be the x value. The second one will always be y, and then it'll always, in this case, be color and then size. The only reason it's always that is because that just happens to be the order I typed them. If you want to change the order for your function, you can change and type it in a different order here. You don't have to change anything in the middle. You just have to make sure everything matches up name-wise. But if you change the order, so maybe I wanted this, y, x, size, color, that would still work. I would just have to change the order of the various arguments if I wanted the same result. So again, the order here matters. So if you're using this properly, where x is the x position and y is the y and all that, it that'll kind of help make everything a little more intuitive. But again, the order that you type these arguments is the order that the computer looks for them. So in the case of this function, I'll add, I'll say, if mouse is pressed, I'm gonna make just a, I'll do this. We'll call ghost. It'll specifically be a mouse X, mouse Y. I'll make it red. I'll make it red. And I'll just make it the normal, one time its normal size. So now if I run this again, if I click the mouse, we've got this here again. I've slowed down the frame rate, so everything's a little chunky. But you can see that now we've got this ghost that follows the mouse. But again, because mouse X is used to control the X position, that's what's setting that up. If I change this instead to, I don't know, 300, now it'll always be at that 300 in the middle of the screen. You can see the red ghost is only moving up and down. It changes that position. So if I wanted to swap around different things, it would change it all up. So I'll put this back at mouse X. But there's that. That's just how, again, wanted to reiterate that, the order that you type these in is the order that it looks for. So it's going to just fill in mouse X is the first argument in this call. So we're filling it into the first argument here, which is X, which gets used for various things. There we go. All right. So the next little bit I want to mention is a function that returns a value. So you may have noticed we've actually been using one here in the random function. But basically, whenever we call a function that returns a value, we get something back, and that value gets plugged into our code in place of the function. So I'm going to, again, go down to the very bottom of the code. I don't want this to be inside of function ghost, so I'm just going to make sure I'm not in anywhere. The easiest way to do that is go to the very bottom of your code, past your last bracket, and then go a little bit further. So function, I'm going to make this a random color, just like so. So this one, the way I like to do it, it doesn't really need any arguments, so we won't give it any. We'll just leave this section blank. Now, there's a few different ways that you can do this. I'm going to do it in a way that's a little bit more redundant, just for the sake of being kind of step by step, and clear, and for teaching. So I'm going to say let this color, and I'm going to make it an array. So my goal is to have an array of values that we can use um, for our random color. Because again, fill can take an array of 3 numbers, and it can set it to be a color with those 3 values, a red, a green, and a blue value. So we can just say for let I equal 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus. All right. So basically, we'll say that for each loop, we'll say this color, not P, I. We're going to assign that particular instance of the array is going to be and again, I'm being a little redundant. There's ways to do this that require a lot less typing, but basically, we're just going to put an array in the particular instance of the array, a random integer number. So we have that right there. Technically, we could say 256 because we're flooring it. One more. There we go. So we have that right there. So again, it's just going to put a random number into the array. We're going to repeat that 4 times, and then we're going to return this color. So again, inside of your functions, you have to, make some value, and then have whatever your function does, usually with said value, but then we're going to return it. So again, whenever you say return, we're going to get back the value. So we're going to generate this array of 3 numbers and give it back to our code whenever it gets called. One thing to note is that the return command will instantly stop your function from doing anything else. So if I had, something else, are we back? Okay, I think we're back. Okay, I'm not 100% sure where my internet connection kind of dipped out for a second as I'm streaming this. Again, not sure exactly where that dipped out, so I'll just kind of reiterate just a bit. Again, anything placed after the return won't get executed because return stops the function. So you want to make sure that this is the last thing in your function. So in order to use this, again, we just call the value. So maybe instead of having a red ghost, we can say boop, 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 random color, and we give it an argument. I feel like that did a lot more than it needed to. The random color every time, and I've got it in the console at the bottom there, just returning those values. So again, anytime you need some values to put into your code, we give it 3 random values and we return it. That's it. But anyways, that's going to kind of sum it up. Again, I've got a very wonky internet connection right now, so hopefully this last little part is actually in there. So I'm going to end it right now. If you have any questions, like always, put them in the comments. I love seeing those and responding to them. If you like the video, give it a like, subscribe, all that YouTube